This is the High School Football America podcast for April the 30th, 2020. I'm Jeff Fisher. The High School Football America podcast is brought to you by GameStrat, America's premier sideline instant replay system with outstanding reliability and customer service, plus different plans priced right for every coach's budget. To get a demo, go to GameStrat.com or click on the GameStrat banner ad that's located on every page of HighSchoolFootballAmerica.com. We're heading to South Georgia, where some of the best high school football in the nation is played, and we're going to be talking about America's winningest all-time high school football program, the Valdosta Wildcats, and they have a new head coach. His name is Rush Propst. Yes, that is the Rush Propst from Hoover High School in Alabama and Colquitt County, the 2015 High School Football America National Champs. And Coach Propst is on the line to talk a little bit about the new job. It's only 2 weeks old for him. Welcome to the show, Coach.
Jeff, I appreciate it a lot. Appreciate you having me on. And, I always remember the 15 with your team as a national champion, and I appreciate you for that. And just thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, well, it's good to talk to you, and I got to imagine, like I said, the smile's pretty wide. I wish we didn't have COVID-19 and we could be talking a little spring ball here, but just tell me the excitement you have at this point, being back in the game you love.
It was a year off of high school, but not a year off of football. I worked at UAB last year with Bill Clark, one of my best friends. Had a great experience there, and really thought I might get back in it. I went to USA Academy. With a lot of promises, and then it just didn't work out. Never entered a contract, and the investors just couldn't get it off the ground, and so to speak. And then so I came home when the Valdosta job came open. Is when I sort of started thinking about, do I want to go back to college football, or the Valdosta job has always been a job, Jeff, that I really coveted and wanted and interviewed for in 2006 after the 4 straight championships in Alabama. But so anyway, long story short, we started a dialogue on February the 11th. I met with him on the 14th and then was hired. That was February 14th, and I was hired on April 14th. So it was a process of 5 or 6 different meetings, and really, really blessed to be the head football coach of the Valdosta Wildcats. When you sit in a room like I did last week with Coach Tarpley and Jodon Baker and Coach Bolton and Al Akins and Pitcock, those guys are synonymous with winning 7, 8, 9 state titles. They were Coach Hyder's assistant coaches, and most of them played for Coach Bazemore, or a lot of them played for Coach Bazemore. And so you sit in that museum, Jeff, and you sit there with those guys in their early 70s, and they're telling you war stories. It becomes pretty real.
I can imagine that. And, one of the things I wanted to ask you here at the top, I know, you weren't out of the game like you said, but did it kind of indicate to you how much you love this game of high school football?
It did. It did. I mean, I enjoyed the college game, but I wasn't able to coach. I was an analyst, and I just needed to be coaching because I caught myself many a days coaching, and, you're not supposed to be involved in that as much. And I would just have to bite my tongue and just watch and analyze and break down film and give my opinion of practice, my opinion of the opponent. My job was to break down the other team's offense and give Bill and the defensive staff what I thought the offense was trying to do. So, but what I wanted to do, and I'll be honest with you, Jeff, it's helped me to get back in high school football after doing that. It gave me a chance to reinvent myself, think about things, see how Bill does it. Got so much respect for him. He worked for me twice. We worked together. I've hired him twice. He was the first assistant coach I hired in 1989. He was the first defense coordinator I had in 1999 at Hoover. And so when he returned the favor, and I learned a lot from Bill. I learned some things that I needed to learn. And so I think it'll make me a better football coach after spending a year at UAB with Bill on the defensive side, me being an offensive guy. I think it'll help me. I think it'll help me a lot. And so yes, I'm excited to get back. And here's what I found out. I had let myself, Jeff, become too much of a CEO of the game.
Mm-hmm.
That started, I don't know, years ago, but after the 14th state championship, I got less involved with the day in and day out of just true scheming football and just become a CEO of our program. I don't want to do that. And me and Bill had long conversations. I lived with him. We talked all the time. He said, Rush, you need to go back and call your plays, be the offensive coordinator like you used to be. And I promise you, you will get more energized. And I have. That's what's the most exciting thing to me is getting back in this game is I'm going to be more involved in the offense and calling plays and the actual game of football.
I guess he can teach an old dog new tricks, right, Coach? Coach Rush Propst is on the line. Yeah, he's the new head coach at Valdosta, America's winningest high school football program. And, well, I guess we're all old dogs right now and learning new tricks with COVID-19. And before I rolled the tape here, you said you are, right now you're traveling to Valdosta and back and forth. But I know you would rather be in spring practice now than doing Zoom meetings or probably some of the things you're doing. But what are you doing as the old dog in 2020 in an uncharted territory with pandemic?
We have not started the visual stuff yet, and I'm tell you why. Their kids are working out, for the most part. They're doing their own thing. There's nothing organized. Although I've been impressed with their workouts and how they're working out with different groups throughout the city of Valdosta, but I've not done the visual or virtual learning type things yet. Now, here's what we'll do. Whenever Dr. Hines gives the official word that, hey, this is start date for summer, then I'll count back 3 to 4 weeks and we'll go into heavy install of our system. And then I just think the closer you get to that, because what you're teaching them now or 2 weeks ago, they're going to forget, but you're going to reteach it. So I'd rather just compact it closer to the start date. And then when we hit the ground running, we hit the ground running.
Yep. Get those pads popping. Rush Propst is on the line, the new head coach at Valdosta. Had Phil Jones on the show, the podcast, I think 3-4 weeks ago now, and he was talking about the situation down there. And, of course, you mentioned your name. This was way before the hire, but he said, obviously, Jeff, there's some issues down here, and I'm not asking you to talk about the issues before, but what I do want you to address is, I guess there's some rifts there that have to be addressed. And how have you done that? I know you've only been there a couple of weeks now, but have you addressed that? And what is kind of the message you're telling the faithful there about the new era that's upon them?
You got to do one thing, and it's keep the kids in their best interest at heart. And I think as long as you put the players first, all the other stuff will go away. Now, and Jeff Wells, I say winning football games cures a lot of things. And, so, and Valdosta's expectation of winning is different than 99.99% of everybody else. The last, Coach Rod, I think, went 32-17 and won a state title in 16 in his first year. And, that's not the expectation level they want. So I think Coach Bazemore, that started there as a head coach in 1941 and coached through 1971, set a standard there. And other people before that too, Jeff, that had decades of football. But Coach Bazemore really set a standard. And then Coach Hyder came in right after him 4 years later and started in 75. And coached through 95, so I think 21 years or maybe 22 years. But, he won 7 state titles there, 2 or 3 national championships. So that's the level they want. That's the level they expect. And the expectation level is what you see in the kids. I've watched them work 3 or 4 days, and I've been very impressed with them at work groups and how they work. And I think those kids grow up. Because the guys that have played before them 10, 15, 20, 25 years ago, they know how it used to be. So they demand it out of that group of kids in that town. And so it is different as far as, and I have compared Valdosta to Alabama from a tradition standpoint. The tradition is bigger than a football coach, or any football coach is bigger than any player. It's just something about tradition means a lot. It's an aroma, aura of that you can't really put a finger on, but it's there every day, and you live it every day. When you walk in that museum and you see those 24 state title trophies, it gets your attention. But I do believe if we put the kids first, all our differences will erase, evaporate, and everybody be behind the cats.
Yeah, no, I have no doubt about that. A good victory and a good season cures all the ills out there. Rush Propst is on the line. Valdosta's new head coach, South Georgia, as I said at the top, one of the best high school football areas in America. And, Coach, when I had you back on 15 after the national championship, you talked about a lot of things. You're never one to shy away from a question, and you always give good answers. And I have one for you here, which is, whenever there's a story written about you, right, there might be the word controversial. There might be this, the MTV show. There's all these preconceived notions about you, right? And now here you walk into a new staff as you get things together, a new school, I should say, and you start to put things together. What are some of the things that you do to let people know who the real Rush Propst is? Because I know you've talked a lot about that. You talked about how cancer changed you and all that. But how do you kind of set the tone for people that may have that preconceived notion that this is the guy from MTV, or this is the guy that did this, and this is the guy that did that? What do you do?
You just got to be humble. I mean, you got to come in with some humility, and and not try to recreate tradition. You got to be yourself. I get that. Mm-hmm. Everybody's got to be yourself. But I learned a lot from Coach Hyder when he first got there. I've studied that. He came from West Rome, very successful at West Rome. Really just a powerhouse that in Georgia. Came down, brought his wishbone offense, and people were chiming, and then all of a sudden they go 3-7, and people were upset, and but then obviously he got it turned around. But I think the one thing with him that you learn is humility, and he was a very humble man. Coach Bazemore, really not a guy with a lot of words, but a guy that just sort of, when he spoke now, it was like Bear Bryant speaking. I mean, it was that kind of power that he had over people. And I think that, and so I've learned from the past people how to be and try to follow in some of those guys' footsteps a little bit. Now, am I going to be Coach Bazemore? Absolutely not. Am I going to be Coach Hyder? Absolutely not. You're just not. When you look at that scoreboard, it says Bazemore Hyder Stadium, Cleveland Field. But at the end of the day, you have to be yourself. But then again, each place you have to put on a different mask. And I just think, and you win differently wherever you go. I'm not going to win at Valdosta like I won it. I'm not going to win at Valdosta like we won at Colquitt or even Alma Bryant. I mean, you have to find what's that right ingredients, the chemistry, mix it all in together, and then you've got to decide how you're going to be with your players, with the community, with your fan base. Because this, you know this. I mean, with Lowndes sitting across the, or they call us the other school.
Oh yeah.
We call them the other school. But here's the thing: Jamie and I both understand. Jamie DuBose and myself both grew up in the state of Alabama. We grew up between Alabama and Auburn, and we know, his uncle was the head football coach at Alabama, so he understands that. We grew up in it. So we know, being in the same town, we're chasing the same corporate dollar. Hopefully our programs will draw players that want to move to Valdosta because of a great program and a great school. Not that he's illegally recruiting or I'm illegally recruiting. You don't have to do that. If your program's good enough, people will come. And I've seen that in my past. So I just think you've got to show your kids that you care about them. And if you show your kids, Jeff, that you care about them, mm-hmm. that you love them, and that you want the best for them, because for most of these kids, 95% or better, without football scholarship, they may not have the financial means to go to school.
Yeah, that is the key to it all, right? Making sure you give kids a better opportunity. Coach Propst is on the line talking about the new gig at Valdosta, and we did have Coach DuBose on about a month ago. So, I mean, really at the end of the day, and I've said this a couple of times already, that South Georgia is the best football, or one of the best. You can probably pick two or three, Southern California, Texas, North Jersey, all that. But when you have two schools in a school district like you guys have, can you put that in perspective for people on how good football is in Valdosta, whether it's Valdosta or Lowndes or combining them together?
I think, and you can go 45 minutes east of there with Thomasville and Thomas County Central.
Mm-hmm.
They played in the state championship game against each other, I think, in 91. So here's what I've always said about Valdosta, even back in the early 80s when I came to Valdosta and spent a day and spent time over here watching their program, the residual, or maybe not, the radius of Valdosta is what I call it, anything around 75 miles of that place to 100. I mean, Cairo, great tradition. Two schools I just named, Colquitt,
mm-hmm.
Tipp County. Then you got to throw Camden County in there, what Jeff did there and getting that thing going. But I just think football is important in South Georgia and especially Southwest Georgia. I mean, it's talked about, Jeff. There is a radio, Phil Jones does a radio show every day, 365 days a year, and most days he's talking about high school football.
Oh, yeah.
Chris Beckham, every Monday night, he's talking about high school football. Every Monday morning, Steve Nichols and Steve Parker are talking about high school football. It's year-round. Year-round. They talk about football here. I'm not sure they're doing that everywhere else. Like you said, maybe in a few places in Texas, Southern California, a pocket of Alabama, Jersey, and some places in Florida because the talent level is so good. But I'll put the passion of our fan base, Jeff, our passion of our fan base against anybody in this country.
I have no doubt. I've been there. I've felt it. It's real. And Phil Jones has educated me. He's become a good friend on what it's like. And when he told me he does it 365, I kind of went, well, that's hard to top. Rush Propst is on the line, the new head coach at Valdosta. A couple more questions for you, Coach. We appreciate your time. You had the year off last year, from high school at least, to maybe reflect a little bit on state championships and the building of programs, whether it was Hoover or Colquitt. I'm just curious. Have you done an analysis on the two programs, and can you put one above the other? And when you go to Valdosta, is it like you said, you're going to kind of mesh a couple of things together, and then there's also going to be the new challenge, which is a new program, which I'm sure you're excited about?
Like I stated earlier, I don't think you ever win at the same place, or you're not going to win at Valdosta like you do at the other places. And I'll throw in the third place. What we did at Alma Bryant was remarkable because people forget that, but it's, I was there for a year and a half, 2 seasons. We closed 2 schools that have been 80 years of playing each other and hated one another, 2 different cultures. And then we put that school together in the first year in 7A, nearly put off state championship and set a state record in 7A with 9 shutouts in 13 games. So, that's how I got the Hoover job. But my point being is, I think that each place is so different how you do it. And I think you have to be versatile. You have to adapt. You have to figure out what makes the chemistry of Valdosta special and what do you create that atmosphere that gets you over the hump where you gain an edge to win. Now, at Hoover, 7 straight state championships, we had our way of doing things. It was a little different at Colquitt County. We won more playoff games in 10 years than any team in this state ever won in the largest classification. But we did it a little bit different. And I think we'll do it a little bit different at Valdosta. Well, I take the word I'm looking for, just the
Like a blueprint?
That would be similar. Well, the blueprint, the blueprint of your program won't change what you deeply believe in. You just got to adapt it a little bit to the style of players you have. And I think that's why high school coaches are the best coaches. I've heard NFL coaches state that. I've heard college coaches state that. Because we've had to coach every level, every position, had to wear multiple hats. We're not a lot of college coaches come up, they're a linebacker guy, they become a DC, become a head coach. They've never coached offense. Some of them have never coached another defensive position. In high school football, that's just not true. You recruit to a system in college. You create a system based on your players in high school. Now, you know what I do offensively, Jeff, and defensively, and Bill and I've talked a lot about this over the years. I don't run a 4-3. I don't run a 4-2-5. I don't run a 3-3 stack. We're very multiple what we do defensively, but offensively, you sort of know I'm a balanced, up-tempo guy. But at Hooper, we were in 4 wide most of the time, throwing it 75% of the time. Came to Crawford County, and those 2 years that we won back-to-back state titles, we were only throwing it about 21 to 24 times. But we had 2,000-yard rushing running backs and multiple tight ends. So we won in a different way. So how's that going to happen in Valdosta? I don't know yet. We're evaluating personnel right now. We're looking at personnel. We're developing our way that we're going to be on both sides of the ball. So I can't tell you yet how we're going to do it. I don't know. It won't be radical change, but it will be. We will have some versatility and be able to balance out what we're going to do based on our personnel that we have available.
Yeah, and you've got some talent there. I know that is for sure. Hey, I didn't ask you about this. You talked about meeting all the guys back in the day and hearing the legacy and all that. What about putting together the staff? Is this something you're building from scratch? Is there some holdover? What are you looking for when you put together a staff?
Well, very few places you get to go and completely create a new staff. There's no holdovers on the varsity staff, so I'm starting brand new with 10 or 11 coaches, maybe 12 new coaches. But I'll probably start this first year with 10 assistant coaches and a couple of new freshman guys, and sort of evaluate my middle school stuff. But I've hired 4 assistant coaches right now, and I'm in the process of hopefully getting 2 more hired by the end of next week. Once I get to 6, Jeff, I'm going to hold off until I get a definite on when we're going to start date, and then I'll finish the staff with the remaining 4. So I've got to go ahead and get these next 2 hired pretty quick, and hopefully by next Wednesday or Thursday, I'll have 6 coaches officially hired, and then I'll sit back. And if we're starting June 1 now, then let's just say it's June 1, and I've got to get 6 coaches hired in the next 2 weeks. So that's where we are with our staff right now. But again, if it's July 6th, I got a little bit more time.
Yeah. Well, what do you look for in an individual when you put together a staff? I mean, if a guy's sitting in front of you during an interview, what's the question you ask? What's the thing you're looking for in return? Do you have any secrets?
We've done it so many different ways. I used to believe that I've had a lot of success with hiring, sons of high school football coaches. Like a Jeremy Pruitt, like a Todd Watson, like a Sean Sutton, and I can go on and on and on. I've probably hired 6 people that their dads were high school football coaches. So they were that gym rat, and I don't think I've ever hired one that wasn't a good football coach. The new guy I've hired from UAB that worked with me last year, John Bullen, his dad played at Jacksonville State in the early '80s, and was a high school football coach for 30 years too in Alabama. So I like that. Bill Clark, so the 4 guys that I've got that are coaching college football that are head football coaches, 2 of them dads were high school football coaches. Bill Clark's, Jeremy Pruitt's, Dale Pruitt, and Reagan Clark. So I believe that's an important part. I like, and really I love hiring guys or 2A, 3A, 4A guys at times that have been head coaches because they have to wear about 10 different hats. And so, but I believe that you just got, it's all about chemistry too now. I mean, they got to be right. I'm going to give you an example in 14. In 14 here at Kaufman, I had a guy named Tracy Buckhannon, who's now at Alabama State as my DC. But I hired two more guys that had better credentials than Buck at that point in time. They came in, so we really had three coordinators on that staff. Shelton Felton, who's now the outside linebacker coach at Tennessee, and Jeremy Rao, who's the co-defensive coordinator at Georgia Southern. And so quality of depth of staff, because here's what happens in high school. This is the key to me, is 1 through 4 assistant coaches are usually pretty good on the 7A level. I mean, they really are. Mm-hmm. Even on the 6A level. And it may get to the depth of 5 or 6, where you got 4, 5, 6 really good coaches. My key is having 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And if you can build your quality of staff down deep into your deal, that's where the advantage comes in to me. And I've spoke on that. I'm speaking to all the high school football coaches in the state of Ohio today, later on a podcast, and they're going to ask me all these questions about building a program. And that's one of the things that I've never shied away from. I've spoken in California, I've spoken in Texas, I've spoken in New Jersey, I've spoken in Connecticut. And that's the biggest thing. Depth of staff is the key to winning, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. So that 10th coach, 11th coach, 12th coach, 9th coach, they have to be really good. And a lot of them, if you've got 3 or 4 coordinators on both sides of the ball, I think that's so important. You know where I learned that from, to be honest with you?
Who's that?
Gene Stallings. When Gene Stallings got to Alabama, he hired really good coaches and told every one of them, I'm not having a coordinator, all of your coordinators. Mm-hmm. So you had Bill Oliver, Jeff Rousey, Mike Dubose. You had Ellis Johnson. You had Mal Moore. You had those guys were really all capable of being head coaches, offensive coordinators, but that was the difference in that staff is they were really good coaches on that staff. So I think in high school, you have to be deep with your staff. If you can be deep, you got a chance to be successful.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And when I talked to Coach Stallings and interviewed him for my book on high school football in Texas, we went off on a couple of tangents, and that is one of the things that he talked about in the coaching realm, that he really believed in that. Coach Rush Propst is on the line, the new coach at Valdosta. Going to wrap up with a couple of these questions. You mentioned that you're not the modern guy from technology as we go through COVID-19 and the coronavirus. But here's a couple of questions for you that I've thrown to everyone. The first one is that first message when you get the kids back at you, whether that's June, July, August, we hope sooner than later, and you've got kids in a room, you've got a big program, you guys have big numbers, and you're going to have different types of kids, right? You're going to have a kid that's like a caged tiger. He wants to get out there and he wants to get the pads popping and go after it. And then you might have some other kids that have been sitting there all summer. Yeah, they're working out, but they're watching a lot of news and know that, well, the news is saying coronavirus is dangerous and you shouldn't be, tackling people and being in close quarters and all that. What would the message be to those kids? How are you going to handle that situation? Because in a program, I don't know what your numbers are going to be, around 200 maybe, you're going to have different personalities. Have you thought about that question and how you might handle that to make sure all the kids know it's about their safety and everything else, but football is also a game of, it's a game where you have contact.
Yeah, and I think that's something that the GHSA and Dr. Hines, and I've talked to Coach Savarese in Alabama too. We're really good friends, and we've talked about that. But I've talked to both directors about that, and I think that at Valdosta we have our medical staff will be better than the most. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of these big schools, medical staffs will be good, and so. But I worry about some schools, these outlying rural areas that don't even have an athletic trainer.
Right.
That's what worries me a little bit, with those guys. But again, I mean, it's a catch-22. One, yes, we want to stay safe. We want to make sure kids are safe. We want to take every precaution area we can to be safe with our athletes. But at the same time, Jeff, I just believe we got to go on living. We got to move forward. We got to get back going because I dealt with an issue yesterday with a player, And it's all boils down because he's been sitting in that house for the last 2 months, and he explodes. And I think a lot of these kids now are getting antsy, and you're having issues with a lot of different things that are going on with this, where people are sheltered in home, I think causes issues too. So, I think getting out and us getting back to some type of normalcy is going to be very, very important.
Yep.
But there is going to be a mother that's going to say, how you going to keep my son safe? And that's a great question, as far as we are going to have some precautionary measures, whether that's hiring out internal medicine doctors that are coming in there with extra trainers, that taking temperatures and all those kinds of things now. So it's going to be a give and take balancing act, in my opinion, because let's just face it, they are kids.
Yep.
And there will be kids that may want to use it for an excuse, and there'll be some that want to just jump out into it and not worry about it. So you're going to have to balance that and make sure that the parent feels like that, and you are, as a coach, keeping that child safe.
Yeah. No doubt about that. Safety comes first, and I agree with you. I think we need to get back to a little bit more normalcy right now. But we're at the mercy of other people that are making that decision. But I think hopefully at the end everybody will come together. The last question I have for you has to do with you mentioned you're going to have to go heavy install when you get to that point, and the other thing I was curious about is how you're going to face the conditioning question, because you've got kids of all walks, right? Some have barbells, some are doing push-ups between chairs. Some aren't doing anything. So as a coach, right, normally you're always like, let's hit that gas pedal hard and take off. What's your philosophy going to be at the start there, aside from the install of the systems, but I mean, just getting the kids ready to get in football shape? Do you have a philosophy on that?
I do, and I've heard some things that I'm just not real comfortable with yet. I'm going to encourage Dr. Hines that we need 7 weeks of some work now. I mean, I'm just telling you, you cannot play this game without 7 weeks of summer work. I've heard things, okay, we're going to work 3 or 4 weeks and then get into it and go, and just, everybody will be out of shape. That's not the issue. The issue is, are we going to be healthy enough? You're looking at all kinds of injuries. If we get to that, we're going to be so many different injuries because these kids hadn't lifted and hadn't done what they need to do. So I think the kids at Valdosta, to be honest with you, some of the better players that I've seen, which most of them are stars, they've been working pretty good. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they hadn't done anything. I'd say probably 90% of our kids, maybe not 90, let's say 75 to 90% of our players at Valdosta have been doing something, working out, because there's so many older Valdosta former players that have workout facilities. Those guys get in the community and help those kids work. So I think our kids will come back, 75 to 90% of them will come back at probably about 60 to 70% in shape. Mm-hmm. Now, key to us is we'll have a week of acclimation, of getting them back into it. And then that second week now, we'll start putting it about it. We'll probably go with about 70% week 1. We'll probably go to about 90% week 2. But week 3, we'll be at 100%. With our strength and conditioning and all the things we got to do. And I've talked to a ton of college coaches, they're at home too. And I've talked to a ton of strength and conditioning people. The key to it, to me, we got to have no less than 6, more closer to 8 weeks of strength, conditioning, and along with that, you're doing some practice in high school, but getting in before you put a pad on now. If we get up in there and we try to say, okay, we're going to stay with our date, the only way we can stay with our date is start June 1. That's it. If we don't start June 1, we can't start playing on August the 21st because our exhibition game would be August 14th. There's no way. So, and have 2 weeks of full pads and then play and all that. That means if we're going to stick with our normal schedule, we have to start June 1. If we have to go June 15th now, then we're going to back up a little bit, because I just don't feel real comfortable. I think injuries you think the COVID-19 will spike? Well, I know one thing that will spike, and that's injuries. So So some people are going to argue 6 weeks. Some people are going to argue 8 weeks. So I'll be satisfied with 7 weeks because that's basically what we do anyway. Mm-hmm. We always go 4 in June. We always go 3 in July, and then we get the acclimation. That's the 8th week, and then we put the pads on. We may can shave one of those weeks, but we better not shave 2 of them. So that's my take on it, and I'm really, really amped up talking about that. And I really strongly believe in 39 years of me doing this. You can, and some of their old guys, Jeff, are going to say, well, hey, Rush, we didn't used to start till after the 4th of July. Yeah, when people benched 200 pounds and squatted 300 pounds and ran 4 9s and 4 8s and everybody was the same. You're exactly right. But now it's a different game we play now. It's a more physical, violent, faster, quicker game. We got to understand that. You got to think as an administrator, people making the decisions, they got to understand, hey, this is 2020. We got to get our players ready to play in 2020, not 1995.
Well said. Rush Propst on the line, and we'll wrap up by talking about some football here. Schedule, always a tough one. I asked Coach Dubose about the Wintersville Classic. He's excited to put his mark on it. I'm sure you are too, so I want you to address that and then address that other big game on the schedule, or maybe I'm assuming something for you there, but 2 weeks before the Wintersville Classic, Colquitt County. You travel there. Last year, a big win by the Wildcats in one of the greatest games of 2019 when the Cats beat the Packers 50-49. Talk about going back to the old stomping grounds.
You know, I've been asked that a million times, and Jeff, and I can't sit there and lie and say it's not going to be a big time ball game. It's always a big time ball game. I mean, take me out of it. Colquitt and Valdosta is the oldest rivalry in high school football in this state. Played over 100 and something times. I think 106, 7 times. So I just think that's, it'll be an amped up deal because it'll be over here at Colquitt. But at the same time now, here's the deal. The schedule doesn't allow to prepare for that early or let it linger too long.
Right.
Because, the next week you got Thomas County Central and then you got Lambs and Wintersville Classic. So you got Lake City, Tift, and Warner Robins the 3 weeks leading up to that. So I'll do a good job of keeping our kids focused on the task at hand and the game itself and not get too much into the emotional side of it, And I think Colquitt will be emotional. I do. Mm-hmm. They'll be fired up and emotional. I get that. I do. I understand that. Our kids, maybe not as much as far as, for me, they're not going to do that. I mean, it needs to be about Valdosta and the season and not just one ball game that the fan base are going to get excited about. So, obviously, all games are important. One's no bigger than, well, they are. One more. If you want to win the first game, you want to win the last game. You can do that. You've had a great year. So, and everything in between, obviously, each game's big now. I mean, there's not one no bigger than the other, in my opinion, really.
Well, Coach, thank you very much for taking the time, as always, to talk with us and talk about the new gig. We wish you nothing but success in 2020.
Jeff, I appreciate you, and always it's a pleasure to be on your show. And I just want to tell you, I want to thank you for what you do for high school football. You do a wonderful job, and you've always promoted it, and the things that you do like this help it. And I just thank you for what you do.
I appreciate it, Coach. Again, have a great 2020. We'll see you down the line.
Thank you, Jeff.
Take care. If you're in South Georgia, you may want to circle those 2 dates. September the 11th as Valdosta travels to Colquitt County. That should be a dandy. Last year, Valdosta with a huge 50-49. One of the most exciting games of the year, victory. And then on the 25th, 2 weeks later, September 25th, the Wintersville Classic. We will be there. It should be a dandy. You've been listening to the High School Football America podcast that is brought to you by GameStrat. America's premier sideline instant replay system with outstanding reliability and customer service with different plans priced right for every coach's budget. To get a demo, go to GameStrat.com or click on the GameStrat banner ad located on every page of HighSchoolFootballAmerica.com. You've been listening to the High School Football America podcast. I'm Jeff Fisher.